No one expected the dusty footprint to uncover an international web of espionage. The United Nations Development Summit in Burkina Faso was packed with diplomatic speeches and applauding delegates. Buzzwords like sustainability and regional cooperation echoed through the halls. But President Ibrahim Traoré's focus wasn't on the stage. It was fixed on one man, Dr. Adrien Leclerc. Soft-spoken, sharply dressed, and impeccably polite, Leclerc seemed like the perfect Western diplomat. He took notes silently, kept his water glass aligned with surgical precision, and rarely made eye contact. But something felt off. His shoes, covered in dust and dried mud, as if he'd walked through the countryside, despite having reportedly never left the hotel that morning. Traoré's instincts kicked in. This wasn't diplomacy, this was surveillance. Leclerc wasn't just watching, he was observing. He wasn't listening, he was scanning. He wasn't interested in policy, he was focused on the maps displayed behind the podium. His eyes lingered too long, his pen never paused. It was as if he was mapping, not note-taking. Throughout the session, Traoré's unease grew. The man's hands didn't tremble, his eyes never wandered. His movements were calculated, almost mechanical, and then it hit him. What if this man isn't a diplomat at all? What if, right here in this very room, we're being watched in our own house? Questions raised ahead of answers, but the answers waiting for them were far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. That night, President Traoré gave his security team a simple three-word order: search his room. The man posing as Dr. Adrien Leclerc was staying at a high-security hotel under United Nations protocol. Everything seemed legitimate. His diplomatic badge, UN access card, even his carefully rehearsed smiles. But to Traoré, he was no longer just a guest. He was a threat. At midnight, the covert operation began. As agents entered the room, the first thing they noticed was a large map of Africa hanging on the wall. Not decorative, but analytical. It was marked with precise red dots: gold, uranium, lithium, and more. These weren't tourist sites. They were strategic assets. Inside drawers, folders were uncovered, some coded reports on Burkina Faso's mineral reserves, others covered in handwritten French notes. Transmission ready, commercial proposal sent. But one detail stood out the most: a barely visible symbol in the corner of a document. An old intelligence emblem, a compass encircled in ink, the mark of a defunct French intelligence unit. The intel team read in stunned silence. Satellite images, covert agreements, classified correspondences. This man wasn't just gathering data, he was selling it, offering his nation's lifeblood to foreign buyers under the veil of diplomacy. President Traoré didn't sleep that night. He had proof that his country's future was being stripped, resource by resource, under the radar. But one burning question remained: who was this man really working for, and how deep did the conspiracy run? At sunrise, President Traoré demanded a secret briefing. The documents retrieved from Leclerc's room were handed over to an elite forensic analysis team. Names, codes, and fingerprints were cross-checked. And then came the shocking revelation: there was no Adrien Leclerc. The name was a fabrication, a ghost in the system. The real identity matched a long-buried file: Arnaud Delvaux, a field agent officially declared dead after a covert French intelligence operation in Africa back in 2007. This wasn't just a spy, this was a phantom, someone who had disappeared for years, masterfully reinvented himself, and returned cloaked in diplomacy. His UN badge was real, but the map in his pocket whispered exploitation. There was one massive obstacle. Delvaux now enjoyed full diplomatic immunity. He couldn't be arrested, questioned, or detained. If President Traoré made a move, it could spark an international incident, crippling sanctions, global backlash, and political isolation. Some advisors urged caution: let him go. We can't afford to provoke the UN, but Traoré's response was firm. Gold doesn't run through our veins, honor does, and I won't let that be sold. He didn't need brute force, he needed strategy. This wasn't just a takedown, it had to be a chess match, played move by move, because Delvaux wasn't acting alone. Behind him loomed not just an intelligence network, but potentially an alliance of multinational interests. President Traoré was no longer just a head of state, he had become his nation's lead counterintelligence officer and his first target, the man hiding in the shadow of diplomacy. What's the smartest way to catch a spy? Give him an award. President Traoré knew he couldn't openly accuse a man protected by diplomatic immunity. This wasn't a trap, it was a chess match. Every move had to be calculated. A single misstep could tarnish his nation's image and open the gates to global pressure. His strategy was simple but bold: confront Delvaux without him realizing it. Before a full UN assembly, Traoré stood before the cameras and delivered glowing praise. Mr. Leclerc, you've become a symbol of our regional vision for sustainable development. We are honored to present you with a special certificate of recognition. Applause echoed through the hall. Leclerc, whose real name was Arnaud Delvaux, smiled modestly. What he didn't know was that his laptop was already in the hands of the National Intelligence Directorate. As agents reviewed the extracted files, a darker picture emerged. Delvaux wasn't just gathering information. He was quietly auctioning off Africa's underground wealth, negotiating with Western investors behind closed doors. And it wasn't just maps. There were voice recordings, clandestine deals captured in chilling detail, military support in exchange for uranium reserves, exclusive access to the lithium field. This wasn't espionage. It was the silent commodification of an entire continent's lifeblood. Yet one major obstacle remained. Delvaux was still untouchable, legally protected, immune to prosecution, but Traoré had already begun planning his final move. This wouldn't be another quiet maneuver. It would be a staged revelation, a performance, and once the curtain lifted, there would be no shadows left to hide in. Sometimes the enemy doesn't come with a weapon, but with a badge. And sometimes the real war begins behind the applause. That morning, the presidential palace hosted a special press conference attended by global media. The stage was carefully arranged, national flags in the background, maps of Africa lining the walls. But what sat on the table in front of President Traoré was unlike anything seen before, evidence that would make diplomatic history. Stepping up to the podium, Traoré opened with calm but firm conviction. These lands are not just lines on a map. They are our past and our children's future. Then, one by one, he revealed the evidence: satellite imagery, secret audio recordings, fake IDs stamped with diplomatic seals, all displayed live, on air, with the world watching. Yet throughout the entire broadcast, Traoré never once mentioned Delvaux by name. That omission was no accident. It was strategic. Because this wasn't about exposing just one spy, it was about revealing how deeply a system of exploitation had burrowed into their nation. And at the end of his speech, he left the audience with just one sentence. There were those who tried to steal our soil and thought they could steal our hearts too, but they forgot one thing: we don't sell our hearts, especially the kind that beats with a mother's prayer. The impact was immediate. Later that day, the UN issued a quiet statement. Delvaux had stepped down for health reasons, but everyone knew the truth. This was an embarrassment buried beneath diplomatic silence, but the people didn't forget. From that day on, President Traoré was no longer seen as just a political leader. He was the watchful guardian of a nation, the man who saw through the handshake and recognized the hidden dagger, because the real battle had only begun once the masks fell.